Hey everyone, this is Amy and Trish from Mamatography, and we are here with lovely Jackson from CameraPro, and we are just going to chat through some camera options that you might want to purchase if you're looking to kind of upgrade your gear or buy some buy some new gear or even buy gear for the first time. So thanks for being here, Jackson. We just thought
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
yeah, no problem at all. We just thought we'd introduce ourselves quickly for those who don't
Yes,
know us.
please.
Well, do the rounds. So,
Yeah. How
yeah.
about I'll get you to move to the next slide.
Yeah.
So we just want to introduce ourselves. We are Amy and Trish from Mamatography. We've been professional family and wedding photographers for the past 10 to 15 years. I'm Trish. I'm from Sydney. I have 3 kids. And Amy.
Yeah, I'm Amy. I'm from Adelaide, but I'm a Melbourne girl. I only moved to Adelaide recently. I feel like I need to say that. And yeah, I've got 2 girls. They're absolutely crazy, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And yeah, I've been a family, wedding, birth photographer, had a photo booth business, all that kind of stuff over the years. So it's been a ride and it's been pretty fun. But yeah, right now, Trish and I, as well as running our own portrait photography businesses, we actually teach photography online to parents who want to learn how to use their fancy cameras. And so yeah, that's been a treat over the last 18 months.
Yeah. We began it, I guess, because so many of the people that we photographed, so many of the families, the moms or sometimes the dads would just be like, oh, I've got an old camera collecting dust in the back of my house, and they bought it to go traveling with, or when they had their first child, but they never figured out how to use it. So I guess we take pride in the fact that we get to teach mums and some dads how to take gorgeous photos of their own kids in just a really accessible and relatable way without all the technical jargon and overwhelm. So yeah, we'll go into that part later, Jackson. So you can probably stop the share now if you'd like to. Yeah, that'd be awesome. So we're jumping right into the camera gear side of things. I've been a Nikon shooter for like 15 years, all my life, basically. I think, once you start with one, you tend to just kind of keep going with them most of the time. And Amy's been a Canon girl from the start.
Yeah, I've been a Canon girl for nearly 15 years now. So it feels, I love my Canons. I will stay with Canon unless something amazing comes along.
Sorry, Amy.
No, I was just going to say, Jackson, if it's helpful to know, we get asked all the time about camera gear, and usually people are kind of coming to us when they're about to buy our course and they want to buy gear to then actually do the course, which is really cool. But then we also have students who go through the course, and then usually they've borrowed gear to do the course, and then they get to the end of it and they know what they want, and so it's just a matter of making those the final decisions about what they're going to buy. So that's when we get asked for this kind of advice at that point as well. So but it's a conversation that just keeps going, and there's lots of opinions and there's so many combinations, and
lots of loyalties as well.
There's lots of loyalties. That's right. Yeah. And the camera the camera brands are just bringing out so much new technology so quickly now that Trish and I like we like our cameras and our gear, but we don't like it enough to know all the models that are coming out. So we need help, and our mums need help.
Yeah, and what I think is important as well, it's not always going to be about specs, and specs are going to obviously be a good selling point for each brand as well, and things like resolution will get thrown at you, and autofocus and things like that. But it is important to note that the more you use your gear, the less you start to worry about specs. And I find it good that both of you don't, you're not going to be completely technically minded. And I find that the people that are actually out there shooting aren't technically minded. They're not pixel peeping, and they're not doing any of that stuff as well. So it's certainly not a knock at all, not knowing what gear is out there, and it's very easy to be overwhelmed. And I think everyone's got an opinion as well, and that's a good thing about photography. Everyone's got an opinion. But the same thing is very much so on the technical side of things. So yeah, just quickly wanted to share that it's definitely not going to be about specs, and only buy what you can afford, and build your way up in the photography space, because it is nice to have a camera that does everything, but it's certainly not essential.
Yeah.
That's an amazing foundation to start. That's great.
Yeah. I love that.
Before we jump right into it, though, Jackson, can you tell us a bit about yourselves, a bit about CameraPro, so people know who they're talking to? Yeah.
Absolutely. Hi guys, I'm Jackson. So I've been working at CameraPro for over 5 years now. So we're a locally owned and operated camera store in Newstead in Brisbane, which is in Queensland. And we've been here for about 7 to 8 years, just in this one physical location. We've also had another location inside the city as well. So we've got the same owner and operator from existence. So we're not a retail chain store at all, or a franchisee, which I think is important to harboring the community aspect that we like to bring in store. We have quite a large store, a flagship store, where people can come in and demo available options, speak to our experts and our team about what options we have in store, and we certainly don't have any preferences in what brands we sell. We're quite open with the brands that we have. We've got obviously quite a number of brands here. So we've got Panasonic, Olympus, Fuji, Nikon, Canon, so pretty much all, and Sony, and all the big sort of brands as well. So we've got quite a number of different cameras, all the way up from entry level, stemming to the high professional sort of range categories as well. So we've got quite a number and a range of different options here, which is really important. And we certainly aid the consumer in what they're trying to decide in their purchases, and we certainly don't like to push any options on them as well. So we've got quite a diverse team here as well, which is really good. So we've got all range of former professionals, shooters. We've got people that have studied photography, and we've got quite a number of different team that are still shooting as well, which we find important. It's hard to give advice unless you've been out there doing it yourself. So it is an important nature of the business as well. So we've got quite a diverse team, and we like to give options and basically get the camera in most people's hands as well, so they can experience it for themselves.
That's so good. It's actually really nice to hear, because I think in the past, when I've gone into camera shops, whether they're in like the shopping center or something like that, there's there's really nice, well-meaning people behind the counter, but often they're not shooting and they just know all the specs and they're trying to sell you on specs. So it's actually nice to kind of hear a different angle and people who are actually out shooting and know what we need the gear for.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we think it's very important. Like I started photography about 10 years ago, possibly even longer in my journey. And I felt when I went into a camera store that I was kind of pushed and at the mercy of the salesperson on the day and what their personal preferences might be. And because it was such a small range, there wasn't really a range of options, and you couldn't go to YouTube and sort of discover a lot of this yourself. So I do find it important part in the process to still have the bricks and mortar stores where you can get advice, but also get the camera in your hands, which is something you can't get from YouTube.
Yep. And Jackson, funny story, I actually had a lady who had a lovely lass who had seen my Instagram and seen my photos and was trying to go and buy gear to help, emulate my style of photography. And then I met with her in person after, like, from mentoring a bit later on, and she said, the person in the camera store said that you used the macro, so I bought the macro lens. And I'm like, I've never used a macro lens in my life. But she's gone and spent this like $1,800 macro lens. So anyway, anyway, we're trying to help you avoid all that.
There you go. So there's some of the trappings you can get into as well, especially when you and it's hard, because when you don't know something, you can be quite trusting and open to someone else's experience and their personal beliefs. So it's very important to know that there are stores that exist where you can walk in and you're not going to get someone else's bias and personal preference. You're going to get the whole experience, and it's not going to be a sales pitch. And I think that's important, and that's kind of what we do and why we do it. That's certainly why I started at this store, so I could apply my knowledge, but I could also I'm passionate in helping people as well. So that's where my love of working here stems from, and that's why I started here, and that's why I'm here tonight as well.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And I just want to say I have had personal experience with this wonderful service. The reason Jackson's here tonight is because I, gave CameraPro a call and he answered the phone. And then he proceeded to have to answer all of my many questions. And, in the days since then, I've called up, other people have picked up the phone and just been able to, pick it up where you've left off as well. So it's amazing. Trish. And, all credit to you guys. It's been a really great experience shopping with you guys. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for your time tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks, Trish.
Cool. So should we get into it, do you reckon?
Yes, let's get into it.
Absolutely.
All right. So we thought we'd make this a bit fun. So Jackson, look, I'm not sure. Do you have any kids?
I don't have any kids, no.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I feel a bit left out now.
Okay.
Well, we thought we'd keep with the theme of mamatography and make this a bit of fun. So essentially, our purpose here tonight is kind of to get your recommendations on the best enthusiast entry-level cameras across the different brands that you hold.
Yep.
But instead of just listing them off, we thought we'd give them a bit of life. So imagine you've got 4 kids. Don't get too scared. But you've got a Canon, a Nikon, Fuji, and Sony. Could you tell us a bit about each of them? What are their personalities like? What are their characteristics? What do you love about them? Do they have any little habits that you only know about once you live with them? And and of course,
we're getting personal.
And of course, if you can also let us know a bit of a price point, even though I know you wouldn't put a price on your kids.
Certainly. That's a good point, Trish. Well, what would I say? So I guess if we started off in the mirrorless world, you'd probably say Sony's your first child. So that's going to be the original child. So that's going to be the child that has started out in the mirrorless realm one of the longest, and it's most revered because the lens options that time and experience will bring. So that is it's going to be your first kid, and that's going to be quite astute around all sort of genres of photography and specs wise as well. And I would say that's going to be the camera you would go to, because you see most photographers using, and it used to be like a Canon versus Nikon sort of battle, and that would be like your first and second child, right? But I find Sony in the mirrorless realm has been around one of the longest, especially in the full frame market, which is something we're going to touch on, I believe, a little bit later. APS-C versus full frame, things like that as well. So certainly in the full frame space, Sony has been quite dominant. So it's the oldest child, I guess, in the scheme of this argument. But I would say it is still looking over its shoulder a little bit and looking at the other kids, knowing there's being a bit of attention paid to the rest of the kids there, and so it's certainly the oldest child, but yeah, it's also watching over its shoulder. So and then I would say probably the second child is going to be your Canon. So your Canon is starting to nip at the heels of the oldest child in this example of Sony.
This is so good. Yeah.
I'm just working on the fly here, guys.
This is so good. I love
it. So Canon would be starting to catch up a little bit. Obviously never going to catch up in terms of age in the mirrorless category, but has been around for a while as well in experience. A good brand to have, things like 5-year warranties, which is important as well, and something that can be a bit underrated with most camera brands because they're either 2 or 3 years most of the time. So I would say Canon's slowly catching up to the older sibling in the mirrorless category. It's starting to gain a bit more popularity again after the change from DSLR to mirrorless, but it's starting to gain, I would say, a bit of traction. And then that would probably bring the third child into the frame as well, which would be Nikon. you could almost say in some ways a bit of an identical twin to child number 2, which would be Canon. So Canon and Nikon are kind of talked of very identically in a lot of ways, and have been for the last 10, 20, possibly even 30 years. Yep. So they're kind of sort of the same school of thought, but I think they've come a little bit more distant as time has moved along. And Nikon is reinventing itself quite a bit as well. So that spending time apart, the second and third kids, they've sort of grown their own character and qualities as well. So it's quite a bit different to how it all started. But that's how I would sort of put it in the category of this conversation. And what I would say in terms of probably the fourth child now, the youngest child, the child that's getting a lot of attention lately, which would be Fuji. So Fuji would be the youngest child in the mix, the baby of the family, but it's starting to get a bit more attention, and the other kids are a little bit unsure and a bit on shaky ground because Fuji is getting a lot of limelight at the moment. Yeah. So that's probably how I would sum the family equation up, but hopefully I did it justice for you guys.
That's awesome. Hey, Jackson, can I just ask you a quick question just to back it up a little bit? Because some of our audience, they're hearing like mirrorless and digital SLR, and they're like, what the heck? What's the difference? If you had to like say it really simply, what the difference between those two are, what would you say?
Absolutely. Good question. So what I would say to those at home that are trying to decide about DSLR and mirrorless in this equation is DSLR has been around for quite a long time. So we're talking, 1980s, 1990, more to a 2000 sort of scope. And essentially they are a bigger and heavier model camera to the mirrorless camera. The mirrorless camera has basically removed the mirror box technology. So that was that flip-flop sort of sound that you would traditionally get from the mirror coming up. And what the mirror actually does is it's projecting into the viewfinder. So you've got an optical viewfinder. So you're getting a scope of a through the lens type experience because of the mirror box is actually inside the camera and behind the lens. So why did they remove the mirror box? Well, there were limitations to the technology and how quickly the camera could operate with the mirror box there. So with the mirror box going up and down and the size of the camera, the first thing was to get rid of the mirror box and rely on the sensor, which is always there, to do most of the moving and the technologically of the camera itself. So in terms of things like autofocus, size and weight, and now we're using an EVF as well. So the EVF is obviously the digital display that you look at when you look in the viewfinder of a mirrorless camera. So it's no longer the optical viewfinder that you used to have because of the mirror box has been removed, but now you've got the digital display. So what you see, I think, in a learning curve when you start out in photography is nowadays you have what you see is what you get sort of component. So
very cool. Yeah.
So when you're looking through the viewfinder, you can see exactly what the exposure is going to be like. You can see your settings down the bottom, and it's just it's a pretty nice experience. And especially since I guess photography has grown in popularity and the mirrorless cameras have gotten better and better, that experience has become a bit more seamless too, which is really cool.
Yeah. So if I was going to summarize that, I'm hearing that mirrorless, they're a newer technology, they're smaller cameras, they're better capability of just better software options. Awesome new exciting technology. It's really cool.
There's still going to be some pros and cons. I don't know if you wanted to touch on the pros and cons now, or
we can do that, and then we can kind of talk maybe specific models of the cameras so that people know what we're talking about.
Awesome. So I would say pros, as discussed with the mirrorless options, is you're going to have traditionally faster autofocus, but when you're using the rear LCD screen, you're going to have the same experience as if you're looking in the viewfinder. So that was quite different to the DSLR technology. When you press the live view button, the mirror slaps up and then you can see what's going on the LCD screen. But that's actually using a different autofocus system to the default one that was in the optical viewfinder. So you're actually getting a much slower experience.
Didn't work very well for that.
Yeah.
No.
And for video and for autofocus, you're going to reach a lot of limitations there. Also, obviously, size and weight is another con of the DSLR system, which you find much better in the mirrorless system. So that allows you to have smaller lenses, smaller setup time. The camera operates a little bit quicker. So autofocus for the mirrorless is always going to be much better. You've got now, obviously, the EVF display, which is going to be much better than I find the optical display, especially for new photographers starting out. Probably the biggest drawback and probably the main drawback that you get is going to be battery life. And Trish, this is something that you sort of started to experience a little bit at the moment.
Like, give me another battery.
Exactly. You will have a bit more of a limitation when it comes to battery life. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest cons of switching from DSLR to mirrorless is going to be the battery life, because the DSLRs aren't operating off the two screens. You've got an optical viewfinder instead of a pure digital one, and that's going to drain a lot less battery. And things like IBIS, that's working constantly, which is in body stabilization for those at home, is constantly working in the camera, so it is consuming battery life as well. So some things to consider.
I think maybe as parents shooting their kids, I guess I wouldn't tend to worry too much about the battery life, because usually you're at home and you can just charge and swap out quite easily. Like, we're not doing wedding photography or anything, which is cool. And I would say that the mirrorless cameras, with their weight and the lenses and everything being smaller, is actually quite cool for parents to be able to, chuck in their bag and in their pram and all that kind of stuff. That just helps any mums or dads sitting there.
For sure. And I think some of the biggest pluses are going to be things like face and eye tracking technology, which is is a game changer. And especially holding onto a button and relying on it to track an object, whether that be it might be a person, it might be a bird, it might be a car. Like, the technology is getting really good now with the AI moving throughout the camera, so that you're going to miss a lot less of those experiences, especially if it's just candid moments, just by using that technology. So that's something to consider as well.
That's right. Actually, inside our course, Jackson, we show my daughter, we go inside the camera and we do the whole face tracking thing, and she's jumping up and down on the spot like a crazy person, but it's still managed to keep on her eyes, and it's just incredible technology. We love it. It's awesome.
It's huge. And for any of those mums looking to start to get into the portrait side of things and the wedding photography market as well, like things like spinning around at a ceremony, getting the first kiss, like the moments that used to be quite hard to navigate and try and work through. Now you can now you've got that technology there as almost like a second shooter assisting you in a lot of ways, which is it's really quite cool.
A few less grey hairs for all those wedding photographers.
Right. Any less stress for a wedding photographer is a pretty big deal.
That's right.
Cool. So, the other thing I would say is video technology is ramped up a lot. So you've got your 4K, your 1080p and all those modes now in the mirrorless cameras, but they still operate with tracking, with all those modes, touchscreen, a lot of the cameras these days as well. So overall, the refined experience and what you get out of cameras has certainly changed a lot from DSLR.
Awesome. That's great.
Cool. Hopefully that answers any questions. But if you have any more questions, team, feel free to ask. Hopefully I can answer everything for you.
That's awesome.
I think we'd love to actually hear the specific model from your recommendation across the brands that you have. Just so people can kind of, if they want to write it down or if they want to just, go into a store and ask to have a look at it or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. I'll try and start in no particular order, so it doesn't sound like I'm giving any bias to any of my children here, but I'll start with Fuji. And now what I find good about Fuji is there's so many different lens choices that are all cost effective. It is a smaller system for what you're getting as well, which is really nice. So in my hands, I've got the XT30 Mark II. Now, what I like about Fuji is their colors. So you don't have to spend too much time editing. They have a great inbuilt mode called their film simulation mode. So what that is, it's basically a baked on preset that you can get, and that kind of gives you a finished article in a lot of ways. So if you're doing a bit more travel, if you're doing candid family moments and you don't have a great deal of time editing, I find that the Fuji colors do a really good job of replicating someone who's quite proficient in editing as well. So you get some really nice images. Now, the thing to consider as well with Fuji is most of their lenses are quite compact and small. You get quite a good bundle deal, and nothing is too crazy expensive in Fuji terms. So I think even some of their most expensive lenses, pro lenses, are around that $1,000 to $1,500 range. So it's a good system for long term as well, because if you were to grow with your system and buy more expensive lenses as time goes on, you can rest assured that Fuji are doing a good job with cost, but also the size of the gear as well. So something that you can kind of blend between traveling and candid moments, family portrait sessions, things like that. So it's going to be a great resource. And now they've really started to step up with the autofocus technology, Fuji, and they obviously going with a high resolution sensor for things as well. So this is a 26 megapixel sensor, which is still plenty of information. It's an APS-C model, which means it will have a crop factor. So what essentially I'll try and explain probably crop factor a little bit later. There's going to be a lot of information thrown at you tonight, guys. And I apologize.
We'll help you guys. Ask in the Facebook group and we'll
please, if you can simplify everything that I say, that'll be cool. But what's so unique about Fuji is they've got a great deal of analog dials and displays as well. So if you do like the vintage look,
it's all about looks for me with the Fuji.
It's usually a camera. Yeah, it's usually a camera that most people will have as a backup or a travel option. Something like that, because it's so good in size. For street photography, it's perfect as well. Just through size, image rendering, lens options. If you like to shoot prime lenses over zoom lenses, Fuji is a really good option because they have such a great range of prime lenses as well, because it's kind of built around the mystique of film photography in a lot of ways.
So I'll just say, although I am a Nikon shooter for all my professional stuff, I have a little Fuji, and that's my personal camera. And I kind of carry it with a film camera, and I shoot kind of both because they operate similarly. And I love it. I love my Fuji. So nice choice.
Fantastic cameras. It's kind of the camera you can take anywhere. And now they have such a good range. So, something like the XT30, I think is about, $1,400 body only. Cool. Something like the 18 to 55, which is kind of a flexible all-round zoom, that's going to set you back only about $500 or so as well. So you're getting a pretty great overall package for about $1,700. $1,700, $1,800, roughly around that. Don't quote me on any of these prices tonight, because prices are always changing. So leading into Christmas, though, there might be some good sales around, so keep an eye out. But
I think Trish and I, we just want to echo that we just think Fujis are such an awesome option for parents for all the reasons that you've said: the smallness, how cool they look, the photo quality, and we would both just say also that we know lots of our professional friends that are taking incredible work on a Fuji. And I'm so jealous of my friends who rock up to shoots and they've just got their one little camera that they rock in with, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's worth just considering swapping over for that factor. Less gear is it kind of frees you up to be in the moment a bit more too, which is really cool.
100% agree. 100% agree, and that's why it's so popular, and price point is always very, very good with Fuji. Plus they've got a 3-year Australian warranty as well, so it is another peace of mind thing with Fuji. But yes, they are gaining a lot of popularity. If you're on YouTube a lot looking at camera options, the X100V, which I'll just briefly show. has gained a massive following at the moment. So there's like a bit of a cult status to that camera. But Fuji are doing very, very well. But the photos that you get out of those cameras are amazing. Perfect. So I might talk a little bit about Canon options at the moment. So you've got the R10 here. So this is the EOS R10 with the 18 to 150 lens option, which is a good all-round zoom. The R10 is a great camera, 24 megapixels. It is APS-C size sensor.
So that means it's cropped. It's cropped to smaller.
A cropped sensor, yep. Which will obviously have a different ability in terms of lenses and what focal lengths mean, which we'll try and touch on a little bit later. But essentially that means you can use EFS lenses or EF lenses. Now, the good thing about Canon is they've done a really good job with the adaptation, basically with the EF to RF adapter. So if you do have any Canon lenses, if you do pick up any cheap Canon lenses over your time as well in photography, you can still certainly use them on any of the mirrorless models from Canon, which is really good. So the good thing about Canon is the breadth of EF lens options from their traditional systems, the DSLR systems, but now they've started to transfer over to the mirrorless systems as well. So they're now making EFS or RFS lens options now, which is basically means they're built around a crop sensor, but then you can also use your full frame EF or RF lenses on this system, which makes it really special. Things like having really good touchscreen. I think Canon, the way I would describe Canon as a brand, especially in the entry level market, is they make things so easy to use. They've got a really good app. They've got a really good warranty, 5 years as well. So the support is there. But I find Canon the easiest of the brands to probably navigate in terms of the menu system.
I would echo that. I think I had mine sorted out. I think I got when the Canon R came out, I think I had it nutted out within about 10 minutes in the back end. It was just so intuitive. It was really easy.
And that's how I sort of describe it to people in store as well. It's just that brand that is going to be a really good option starting out because it's so easy to navigate. There are a lot of people in the Canon ecosystem as well. So if you ever need support from friends, especially in groups, usually someone will have a Canon camera somewhere along the line.
That's so funny. That's right. In our course, we're like, hashtag your camera just so other people can find it and you can kind of talk to each other.
Legit. Because it makes that experience so much better, I think, for people. So they've got the R10 models at the moment, which are basically a replacement, I guess, probably to summarize in the EF category, something like maybe a 90D, maybe a 900D. For anyone that's sort of in Canon DSLR sort of market, it'd probably around those models of cameras, probably a replacement for about a 90D. It's entry level, but still got a bunch of features which are really important. And its older sibling would be something like the EOS R7. So for about $1,500, even slightly less sometimes, you get a camera and a lens in Canon's mirrorless ecosystem, which is pretty important.
Just to backtrack on that a little bit, and only because Amy and I kind of sing the praises of the Nifty 50 lens and a 35, which is what we often use. So we kind of try and suggest that maybe you get the body that you want, but a Nifty 50. So in that sense, because I know you showed a zoom for that particular camera, would there maybe be a good 50 or 35 kind of maybe in a good price range that you could suggest?
Yep. So good things important to note as well with obviously 50 mils, whether it's an APS-C model or a full frame model or whatever the sensor size is, you're trying to match it up to something that's a 35 mil or a 50 mil on a full frame camera because that'll give you a pretty good overall experience. So I would say the RF 50 mil is a really good option. They have a replacement of a Nifty 50 in the EF category now transferred over to the RF category. So you're looking at about $298, I think, roughly for a 50 mil 1.8 lens. So that's a really good option. So you could certainly go something like an R10 or an R7, even if you wanted a bit more advanced features. So with the R7 now, you go up a bit more in your autofocus performance. If you're doing a little bit of wildlife photography, if you want to focus on a bit more on video features, that would be something the R7 is going to be able to do. So if you wanted to save a bit of money, you could either obviously buy the kit, or you could buy it with the body only and go a nifty 50. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I ask, where does the Canon RP sit in that? Because obviously that's the mirrorless, and we've been talking about the digital SLR. Like, is that the bottom? Is maybe what's the entry level mirrorless for Canon?
Yeah, well, I would probably echo that, and I would say something like the RP. So the difference with obviously other models that Canon have at the moment, like R5 and R6, is that the RP and the EOS R were the first two mirrorless cameras released in that full frame category by Canon, and the RP being the younger sibling to the EOS R, which was kind of built around a replacement of something a little bit around the 5D category. The RP was kind of like seen as a little bit like a 6D or something in that sort of category as well. So the RP is a good model. It's just the first generation probably of models within Canon's mirrorless systems. So it might not have a bit of the polish that the newer models have, like the R5, the R6, the R7, and the R10. But you're obviously getting the full frame sensor and image quality. If that's going to be the standout thing that you want to focus on, the RP or the R will deliver exceptional image quality still. It's just a bit more of a bit sluggish in terms of, I guess, operation, but you still deliver amazing results. So if you want something that's going to run more efficiently and smoothly, and you're going to feel like it's not such a prototype as something like the RP, then obviously the new cameras are the way to go. But if you like still image quality as being one of the first preferences, and you want a full frame sensor, then the RP or the R is a really good choice.
I have the R, and I haven't felt like I need to upgrade it yet. I do all my work on the R, and I love it. It's just been amazing. So
beautiful sensor, same sensor as the 5D Mark IV. So if you like the images coming out of a DSLR like the 5D Mark IV, and you wanted a mirrorless version of that camera, the EOS R is a great choice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can you refresh what kind of price point are we looking at for the RP and the R? Because they're a little bit more expensive than the real.
So I think the R. Yeah, I think the RP is about $2,300 or so these days, and then the R's up into that mid to late $2,000 range. So it starts to jump up into your R6 territory. The EOS R6 Mark II, which has just been announced, which has just come out, that's a nice system as well. But I think for anyone starting out, your focus should probably be more suited to the R10, the R7, and you could probably say the R10 or EOS R as well. All within that sort of $2,500 and less sort of range.
It's awesome. Cool.
Perfect. I'll introduce a couple of other models as well. What else have we got here? Something like the Z50. So this is a Nikon. So this is Nikon's sort of foray into their mirrorless systems as well. They're starting to really flesh out their line at the moment, Nikon. So they're doing a really good job. They've got models such as the Z6 and Z7, and now they've taken kind of the pro world by storm with the Z9. So they took their time into the mirrorless foray, and it was kind of building a bit more of a foundation early on, and now starting to excel a bit more in terms of what their features and what they bring. But something like the Z50 is a really good entry point into a mirrorless system if you were going down the Nikon track. Nikon have done a really good job in terms of their screens. Their EVF performance is always really lovely. They've got a very usable touchscreen. Their screens are always quite nice, as I said. But now they're starting to flesh out their lens lineup as well. So they're starting to do a really good job in what they can do with their lenses. They've got quite a built range of different options now. They've got the Z8, they've got the Z5 now, the Z50, the Z30. So the Z30, Z50 are kind of your APS-C models. And then it starts to transition and jump up to your full frame mirrorless models as well. So it starts to get a bit more expensive after something like the Z50. But if you want to look at an entry level performer that's going to do a really good job, and this is something you could put a nifty 50 on, and it would be a really small overall package. So the good things about all the APS-C models is they're going to be smaller. The lenses usually, if they're built for an APS-C system, are going to be smaller as well. So something like the Z50 is going to have good autofocus performance. It's going to jump into that Nikon system. Nikon's got their adapter as well. So you've got the options of using a lot of the Nikon glass, especially if you have a DSLR in the Nikon. Something like the Z50 is a really small jump where you can get into the mirrorless system and adapt that and go along with it. So the FTZ adapter is Nikon's adapter. So it means you can use a lot of their glass as well. So it's another thing worth looking at. If you like Nikon and you wanted to have a look at their options, start with something in the Z30, the Z50 sort of category. So you've still got enough resolution. You've got a small system, but you've got a very usable system. And I find that Nikon is starting to build out their range really well now, which means better options for the future as well. So 24 months warranty with Nikon. So they've got quite a good array of options there. So that's the Z50. So Z50 is going to be under that sort of, or around that $2,000 price range. So anything under that, something like a Z30 is going to be a really good option as well if you want to start. But, you know, obviously you can still use some lenses that you might have picked up from Facebook Marketplace and just wanted to adapt it to a system, something like the Nikon system, because there's so many Nikon lenses out there, wouldn't be a bad place to start. Cool.
Awesome.
Any questions, or just keep rolling on at this stage? We'll go to Panasonic. So Panasonic and Olympus have been in the mirrorless game for a little while as well. Like Sony, they were one of the first systems that sort of forayed into mirrorless technology. So things like in-body stabilization was pioneered by brands like Panasonic and Olympus, which is really good. So what in-body stabilization essentially means for people at home is having slower shutter speeds, but not incurring a penalty of blurry photos. Now, what I mean by that is more so the photo will be not blurry if there's a model that's not moving in the, so if there's no movement in the photo, you won't incur a penalty. If you were taking a photo of a bridge, let's say, bridge isn't going to move within that sort of time. So if you were to use a slow shutter speed like 30th of a second, even, you know, could be 1 second, and you won't incur the movement penalty that you usually do by the movement that you have during that time. So without moving, the camera sensor is essentially being stabilized to the point where any sort of movement is being mitigated by the IBIS performance. So it means you can take pretty good photos handheld with a second exposure and not incur a penalty, which is a big deal. I think for any sort of portrait sessions in low light where you're really pushing ISO and things like that, and really wanted to keep your shutter speed a little bit lower, not incurring that penalty of the slow shutter speeds, being handheld and having shaky movement is mitigated by the IBIS. So it works really well. And so Panasonic and Olympus have been the pioneers in those sort of scopes for quite some time. Now, just remember with Panasonic and Olympus, in their Micro Four Thirds lines, they have a smaller size sensor. So people probably ask why Panasonic, why Olympus, because they have a smaller sensor. It just means you've got a smaller system as well, it's pretty important. So if you like to shoot any long lenses, telephoto lenses, anything in that regard, or just want a really light setup, the Olympus or Panasonic are both great options in that category because of the size sensor. So ultimately, the trade-off is you will have longer focal length on the telephoto lens focal lengths, and on the wider focal lengths, you will incur a little bit of a penalty. It kind of pushes out the focal length a bit more, but that means you get more on the longer end. So I always tell people, if they're looking for doing a lot of photography on the longer end where things are further away, having a smaller size sensor is kind of a little bit of a hack to get a longer focal length. But if they want to shoot wide, a bit more landscape stuff, then they're going to have to just go a little bit wider in the lens choice for landscape. So something to consider with both Olympus and Panasonic models, like the G95, a good option. The OM5 is a good option in Panasonic. And you can certainly still get your nifty 50s or your primes to start off with both of those camera options. Something like a 12 to 60 to cover like that 24 to 70 full frame space is always a really good starting out option as well. So in Olympus and Panasonic, it'd be something along those lines, which is really nice. Yeah, but they were basically the pioneers of IBIS. So that IBIS technology is something that's now incorporated in a lot of models. So when you do research into cameras and what cameras that you might like for those at home, if you see IBIS, basically what that means is you will get stops of protection against shakiness. So you can shoot at slower shutter speeds and incur less of a penalty because of that. So that's great for older photographers as well. But anyone that's, wants to do a lot more handheld photography versus tripod photography. So something that's a consideration in your search as well.
And I reckon some of our mums might have kids on their hips and they're trying to shoot like this too. So that might be a good option.
Mums are juggling things all the time. So if you can give them a help in that regard, it's kind of like little buddy is holding the sensor still just to allow you. That's
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So probably the last brand I'll quickly cover is your Sony. So you've got some really good vlogging models at the moment with Sony as well, which is at a really good price point. So you're looking only about $1,000. So if you want to,
tell us, do you have $1,000 Sony there?
Yeah.
Can you show it?
Yeah. Sony, I really am really impressed by Sony. There's so many.
Wow, what's with the floppy thing?
I want it because it's got the.
Yeah, this is like a little microphone cover, which is
that
cute.
would get kids' attention.
I was like, is it like a kid wrangler?
That's right.
They pay attention when this camera is around. No, so the good thing about this is you've got like your internal zoom. So this is a ZV-10. They have two models, ZV-1, ZV-10. As well, but their models are great because these are awesome vlogging options. So if you wanted to start doing any makeup tutorials, what's
our mums don't have time for makeup tutorials.
give me a mum thing that maybe a mum's going to do.
Maybe they wanted to make a little video of their kids.
Yeah.
Perfect. Took the words out of my mouth on that one.
Jackson, does this camera allow you to shoot in manual, like easy access manual settings?
Yes. Awesome. So you've still got that option there as well, which is really important. Yep. So a lot of the models will give you very basic sort of starting out menu options or settings, but most cameras will still all give you the manual option, which is important as you progress through the journey. And that's probably something you've stressed to those at home, that even if you wanted to start out in the most basic settings and start to progress into manual, that's always a really good option because most cameras will do that. The good thing about this camera is it's got inbuilt zoom, so you've got your zoom, so you can I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, I can see. Yeah.
But so you've got the ability to zoom in the camera, so you don't have to rely on using the lens to do that. So for anyone's doing quick videos, content-based stuff, even TikTok stuff, this is the perfect camera for something in that regard. And Sony's doing a really good job in that space at the moment. ZV-10 is a good camera to consider as well because it's got interchangeable lenses. So that means you can use third-party brands like Sigma, and there's some really good options in this sort of category as well. So if you're doing, even if you're doing Zoom calls from home, there's obviously a lot of people working from home now as well. You can even attach this as a webcam. So you can essentially turn your webcam into something that's going to have a bit more depth of field, you know, the qualities that can shine a bit more in those meeting presentations, things like that. If you wanted to use something like that, then the Sony ZV-10 would be a perfect model. It's only $1,000, gives you the option to take some really nice photos as well. But mainly it's for those vloggers and anyone that wants to do a bit more video work. This is a really good starting option as well.
Yeah, awesome. That's so good.
But yes, then Sony's got obviously their other ranges as well. So you've got their crop sensor range, and then you've got more of their full frame range. So something like the A7C starts to get up there, but it's still, that's around the $2,500 range. So their full frame models usually start at $2,100, $2,200 and above. So a good one to consider for those dialing that back to the newer models is something like the A7 Mark III, which has been around for about, I'd say about 3 years, 4 years now, maybe even a little bit longer, but that's still a great sensor and it's still great technology. And the image quality that you get from a camera like that is second to none.
Amazing,
yeah.
I've actually pegged that one. We have a camera gear buying guide, and that's like one of the ones that I was like, that's what, it's a brilliant one to if it's within budget, it's great.
Epic. During sale periods, that can drop to about $2,200, $2,300, and I think that is a really good buy. And the good thing about that too, as well, is there's going to be a lot of those cameras on Facebook marketplaces now. So if you do have a savvy eye and you do check out Facebook marketplace, you see some really good options there. Obviously that's a camera to focus on. I think anything in the Fuji range is really good because it's in that ecosystem. Obviously A7 III, A7 IV, any of those cameras, A7R III, you know, a bit of an older model again, but that's something you could find on Facebook Marketplace for a good deal. So
they're not really going to go wrong with any of these Sony options, are they? Like it's going to be a great choice.
Image quality and autofocus performance with Sony, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get obviously stabilization, IBIS, as I was saying before, in a lot of the models too. You might find probably the biggest cons on Sony is sometimes people don't like the colors as much as a Canon or a Fuji. So that's something that's somewhat common. Also, you have to work a little bit harder to get some images that you'll be happy with. But I find Sony just gets the job done. So it's going to be a camera that you're going to be rely on as a pro to deliver amazing image every time. But you just might have to work a little bit harder in the editing room sometimes to be happier. As your default stuff like Fuji and Canon traditionally look quite good out of camera.
I guess lots of our mums are starting, so they don't know what they're missing yet, really. So if they're starting on Sony, I'm sure they're going to be fine.
That's literally take me back to then.
Right?
All the freedom,
Exactly. So no, it's good. Now you can rely on someone hopefully to steer in the right direction because there are so many choices out there. I think it's just important, you know, to trust people that you trust. Like a YouTuber is going to obviously, you just don't know what a YouTuber is going to try and sell you and why they're trying to sell a specific product. So it's not always the best option to trust someone that you've seen on YouTube recommending a camera. Usually they're pretty honest, but again, they make a living making these videos and they get paid for them. So you've got to take that into consideration as well.
And I'm not sure that our mums or our parents have time to sit and listen to their their full long crazy unboxing videos. So
I agree. I think it's condensed videos for mums as well. It's
exactly.
like 5 minutes after yoga and before school that they might be able to.
You got it.
Double speed to listen to it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So that's basically most of the cameras and the various brands and the ranges, but there's obviously give or takes based on price or whether it's secondhand or new and things like that. But most of the cameras have really good warranties as well, so that's important. Shop for warranties, but come into a camera store and check out what's going to work for you, because settings and specs on paper looks lovely, but until you get the camera in your hands, I think that's the most important thing, because there is that feel and that the want that sort of comes from holding a specific camera that feels quite right. So unless the camera doesn't feel right, you're generally not going to take it out with you. And
that's right.
Yeah, any camera is great, but if you're not taking it with you, then it's just as useful as your iPhone, and you may as well be taking that for most of your stuff. So it's just something that you're going to want to take, and something that you're going to take with you is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, that's right. And I think just kind of to wrap up from our point of view, like Trish and I, as we said, we love shooting on our 50mm lens and our 35mm lens. We're big. We encourage our students to get at least one prime to do the course, so you can experience the magic of prime lenses. So we would, I guess, always recommend to try whatever camera you end up getting, whatever camera body, try and get a nifty 50, in whatever brand that is, because I just wanted to check with you, Jackson, like this whole idea of a nifty 50 lens, it's really just a 50mm, a good quality 50mm lens, and most brands have them. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And the premise to having a prime, you probably explain it in your training course as well. I learned in photography school something similar. It's just developing your eye based around the focal length that you're shooting on. So it gives you the ability to work with composition, framing, things like that, because you are limited to the one lens, which means then you move in and out with your feet rather than just sit back, 10 meters away. Sit back 10 meters away and zoom in and take a photo and say, I've taken a photo. But with a prime lens, it really forces you to get in there, get in the action, take some shots, and then realize maybe that didn't work, why that didn't work. And then that will come down to more so you rather than the equipment that you're using. So it trains you a little bit quicker in the basics of photography, framing, composition, a lot of those fundamentals, which are important. Which is great with a prime. And the other thing is it's small, having a prime lens, which is important. But it also helps in situations like low light. And then it also helps again with depth of field. So having that nice bokeh effect in the background is presented by having the aperture of a lens being quite fast, so having a 1.8 or a 1.4, and that's what those numbers essentially will do, is decrease the depth of field size as well, and we'll take some really nice photos once you've got that blurry background as well. So that's pretty important.
Yeah, they're just pretty lenses, prime lenses. They make everything look nice.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Amy, Sigma, I think you've got some Sigma lenses.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I love Sigma lenses, and I say this because back in the day when I was like totally, loved my Canon, I was really in that Canon Nikon fight, and the thought of putting another brand on my camera, I was like, I felt really dirty, but then I ended up caving and getting a Sigma lens, and pretty much because the quality of what they were producing, I found, was just really beautiful, really crisp, really moody, and for the price point, they were half the price of the Canon lenses, and they were doing a really beautiful job. So I guess I just wanted to just double check with you, like if someone wanted to explore these Sigma art lenses, do they make them for every brand, or is it just Canon and Nikon?
Good question. So a lot of the Sigma options so your Nikon and your Canon are going to be your DSLR options. So they're quite a bit bigger now than the mirrorless options. They're great options, don't get me wrong. They're just bigger and heavier in the Nikon and Canon category because they haven't made the mirrorless versions of those lenses. So what you'll find is in Sony, they're actually making the lenses and developing for Sony at the moment. So they're much more smaller and compact, but still give you that same image quality. And you're 100% right. The art series of lenses in Sigma, whether it be the 35, 50, 85, was super, super popular, and because their image quality was outstanding. But they are bigger and they can be big and heavy. So that would be a knock. But now they're starting to make them for a lot of the other systems. So you'll see Sony, some Panasonic as well, and Fuji start to get a bit spoilt for choice with third-party options now as well. So one of the biggest things in those brands is you've got Sigma, you've got Tamron, you've got Samyang, you've got some other options there, which is really good on price point, but still retaining image quality. So that's another important thing to consider. Third-party lenses aren't taboo. They are providing a really good service as well, and some really good image quality. And like you said, Amy, the Sigma Art series of lenses are magical. And the price point is completely different. But just remember as well, the brand specific lenses sometimes can be a little bit better in terms of things like build quality and warranty. So keep in mind that as a center of opinion. And sometimes the third-party lenses might not be as fast autofocus and things like that, but generally the build quality and image performance is really, really good. So there's just a few things to weigh up, but it's definitely not a dirty word having a Sigma lens on a Canon or a Sigma lens on Sony. But I think what's really good about Sony and Fuji is there's so many third-party options now. So that is certainly a trait of those specific brands and why there might be a good investment for now as well.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
So, well, I think we might try and wrap it up a little bit now. But, Jackson, we just wanted to say, thank you for your time. really appreciate your advice and your unbiased opinions as well across the different models. So if our mums were to purchase from CameraPro, I guess we just want to know what should they expect in terms of choice and service from you guys, and also you talked a lot about like warranties and peace of mind. Do you want to talk just I guess a little bit more about that and what you guys are?
Certainly. Firstly, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here, and we do pride ourselves on delivering the community aspect within CameraPro. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk a bit about CameraPro and cameras, because that's what I love to do. But thank you very much. Now, secondly, what CameraPro, I guess, does a little bit differently, as I mentioned at the start of the video, is we do pride ourselves in not pushing any brands, but having a lot of brands here to offer with all shapes and categories. But we have such a diverse team that we really push service and support as our biggest aspect. So within the company, we have a lot of specialists that shoot a lot of different range of camera models and brands. So no one is brand specific in what they give in terms of advice. So coming into CameraPro is a great experience because you're not pressured by time, pressured by brands or price. It's just somewhere you can come in and feel like you're greeted like a friend, essentially. That, if I go to my friend and want to make a decision about a camera purchase, that's how I would consider CameraPro. You come in, you talk to your friends, you get an opinion, you might get a quote, you don't have to buy anything, you're not forced to buy, but you're given quality advice and support. And the other good thing about it as well is if anything does go wrong, we're basically here for you, 7 days a week. So if you do have any problems and wanted to come in, if you wanted to call us, you're going to get excellent support and service in help. And that's something we pride ourselves. We got such a good relationship with each brand that if something was to go wrong, we're a really good first point of contact as well. So we're absolutely going to look after you from the moment you walk through the door, the moment you first call through, but then going forward in your journey, every step of the way, hopefully we're going to be able to be there for you, which is something I think is a bit different to other stores. And just your last point on, I guess, the warranties as well, that is important because brands like Canon offering 5-year warranties, you've got brands like Nikon and Sony, 24 months, you've got Fuji offering 3 years. To have somewhere to go back to is super, super important, because if you do buy grey stock, and what I mean by grey stock is if you're buying overseas and you see really good prices on websites that don't have a bricks and mortar store, they don't have a physical location, that's usually a big red flag. But that also means things like warranties are advertised by them more so than the actual brands, because they're not going through the brand directly. It essentially handicaps them of having any sort of ability to give a brand manufacturer's warranty. So that's something to be really careful of, that you won't have that warranty, you won't have that same service level of support. You might even call them and their number might be disconnected. There's going to be a range of further issues down the line that, you know, if you spent a couple $100 more, you've got that ability for the next lifetime of that
camera. You know, I accidentally spent $2,500 grey market and I didn't realize what I was doing. I thought it was legit.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and it's a common thing.
I wanted to flag that too.
And it's a common thing because, you know, price is super important. The cost of living has only gone up, and you know, you've got kids to look after, and that's going to be the more essential stuff. And then you're going to see, you know, prices that are quite drastically different. And you might go, I might save, you know, a couple $100 here. But really, the most important thing is, if something was to go wrong, essentially you could be paying twice what you paid originally, which is then, you know, a cost of more $2,000 than $200 originally. So it's just something you don't hopefully want to go down unless you're super sure of what you're doing. And just know that service and support is going to be important for the lifetime of your camera, but we're just someone that you can come to talk about tips and settings and things as well. So we pride ourselves in making any sort of effort to bring you here, but not only that, to teach you and let you grow in your journey and be there to support you. So that's, I guess, what we do a bit differently.
That's awesome. And Jackson, like people can, even if they're not in your state, like, you know, they can still ring and order, can't they? Like, I mean, Trish has just done that recently. Trish is in Sydney, you guys are in Queensland. So I mean, you know, we've got mums all over Australia, and we've got international mums as well. You guys don't ship internationally though, do you?
Not internationally, no, but we do ship as far as WA, which
that's pretty far, guys. That's pretty far. So anyway, I just want to really make that point, that because I think some people think you have to go into the store and purchase in person, but you don't have to. If you can have a great chat with someone like Jackson on the phone, and they can have it shipped up and sent to you within a few days, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. We use quite a fast shipping service as well, and we do keep the cost of freight quite down. It actually costs quite a substantial amount to ship items, and we still honor the same sort of pricing that we had, you know, quite a number of years ago, even with cost of living and cost of freight and petrol has gone up. So we do pride ourselves in what we do in the shipping department as well. But it's exactly right. So if you want to call in from anywhere around Australia, you're going to receive the same amount of level of service and support that someone that walked through the doors. And that's something we pride ourselves across all the team. So whether it be phones or showroom, we have that same level of support and service. So it's something we really pride ourselves in. And I know it is a big decision to buy something for a large amount of money without seeing it. But just know there's no commitment to buy when you call through. We're there as your friend and a guiding person, but you know, it's not something you have to make a decision on the day with.
A little trick, you can always go to another camera shop and like play with it in person, and then you can call up CameraPro and they'll put the order through for you.
No comment.
Some ideas, like just if you needed an idea back. No, that's awesome. All good. Perfect. All good. Cool.
Yeah. I think that's Sorry.
Well, I thought before we sign off, we just thought we'd run through a little bit, just quickly about what how we can help parents take photos of their kids.
Oh yes.
So do you want to put that?
I'll go back to the slide.
Awesome.
Phil's going to put it up here.
Amazing.
Trish, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. So as we said in the beginning, Amy and I, we teach a mamatography photo course. So it's like a beginner photography masterclass for mums, teaching you how to get really confident with the manual mode in your camera, but doing it all the while taking photos of the people that you love. So we have 6 modules that we offer. So the first one is actually, you know what? Could we just go to the next slide? So we'll go through them in a little bit more detail. Yeah, so the first one is all about light. Photography is, after all, called also considered as painting with light. And yeah, we just teach you how to see light differently. It's quite an eye-opening week for many mums. So yeah, we really love this week. For the next module, it's all about getting into the nitty-gritty of manual. So this is probably like the biggest, heaviest kind of module that Amy and I, as we've kind of mentioned, you know, we really have kind of learned photography over the years by a lot of feel and just, you know, learning how to translate all this into words that you can understand. So bringing the technical into a really accessible, relatable level for mums. And then we bring it all into practice. We give you practical exercises to get you out shooting and starting to take these photos and seeing it all just start to come together. Yeah. And Amy, do you want to take the next 3 modules?
Yeah, so the next 3, module number 4, I think it's shooting. Oh no, it's learning to edit. I did this module. This is great. So this is where we go into Lightroom and we kind of pull back the curtains and show you how to edit your photos. Use things like presets, you might have heard of them. Just how to adjust those sliders, and then how to kind of export and share your images online. Yeah, and we just show you how to do that easily within that module. Then we go into shooting inside your home. We're so big on this course in making it practical and taking photos in and outside of your home, because that's where I think as parents that we find ourselves the most. So just learning to find those secret spots and pockets of light that you wouldn't usually think look very, you know, interesting, but, you know, with the right instruction and just us teaching you how to see light, you're able to find these magical little pockets in your own home. So that's what we do. We show you how to shoot inside. And then in module 6, this is our celebration week where we encourage you, we celebrate you because you did it, and then we encourage you to go where to from here. So we encourage you to print your photos and also kind of explore projects to kind of keep you going forward. Yeah, into forward on your photography journey. So yeah, it's a really fun course and we've put a lot of heart and soul into it. And it's been a labor of love and like having another baby, hasn't it, Trish? Pushing out another baby. But it's been really awesome and we're really proud of the community that has kind of just blossomed out of mums and we have a few dads. It's not just mums. We have a few dads in there too. You know, learning how to document their kids' childhood, but just in a meaningful and in an intentional way. So yeah. Do we want to say anything else about that, Trish?
Yeah, no, we well, also will mention that, you know, you become part of a Facebook community of mums, like-minded mums on the same journey, and it's just been amazing to see these relationships and connections blossom, all while doing these, you know, taking photos and making these memories that you're going to love for the rest of your life. So yeah, that's, I guess, the heart behind our course. And yeah, we'd love to see you if you're, you know, stumbled across this video, you're looking for a new camera and you also want to know how to use it. We're right here for you.
We'd love to be your guides. There you go.
Thanks so much.
Well,
thanks
guys,
so much, Jackson. Thank you so much for your advice.
My pleasure, guys. And yeah, it's lovely hearing you talk about the sense of community and what you guys have fundamentally built. I think you're doing a great job, and Trish, knowing you in the last couple of weeks, I know how hard you work. So I know that these mums are getting some really good tips and someone that's out there doing it day in, day out. So Amy, as well, really nice to meet you. And it's been an absolute pleasure. So good job, everyone. And just from us as well, if you wanted to get in contact with CameraPro, 1300 431 431 is the number here. You can follow us on our socials at CameraProAU. We've got YouTube and Instagram and all the others as well. So yeah, thank you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope everyone learned something at home. But if you're still unsure, give us a call.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
team.
Yeah.
Bye.